Good evening, everybody, and welcome to In Case You Missed It for the Elocin Legal posts. This video is going over May's posts. So today's the 23rd. It is a bit late, so apologies for that, better late than never. So as usual, just a couple of disclosures. Elocin Legal has limited liability approved under a scheme of the professional standards legislation, and legal practitioners employed by Elocin Legal are members of that scheme. So this webcast is to provide you with general information only, and it is not intended to provide you with legal advice, and it shouldn't be taken as legal advice. So please contact your legal practitioner for that legal advice so that it can be tailored to your specific circumstances. So now that's out of the way, I'm just going to have a quick squiz now at the Facebook posts and go over those. So you may, if you did watch last month's in case you missed it, it was going over April's post, and April was a time that is when COVID hit, and I did mention in that video that we didn't really want to tackle that too much because there was just an influx of information. There was just way too much out there. So I did leave it a little bit for May. Again, it wasn't so detailed. It was just a little bit because there was just so much information. If you wanted to get that information, it was available, and I just, quite frankly, I just didn't really want to be annoying anyone with too much of things that they might have already heard. So just to go over May's posts, we touched on those topics just a little bit. So the first one we spoke about was our electronic platform. How can our electronic platform help you? So what we spoke about during the time of COVID is that being in lockdown, being on our electronic platform was quite advantageous because we have a portal that our clients can log into. So if you're one of our clients, you would know from previous experiences logging in, you're able to see your matter. You're able to see the status, how it's progressing. You've got the files there that you can download, and you can also upload files to us. And there's also a chat room there as well where you can send us it's kind of like a text message. So that was one of the things that we really liked when we were choosing our system. And like I said it previously, we set up the law firm to be as electronic as possible from the get-go, and that was one of the things because we do focus on communication. We believe that that's very important between solicitor and client, and it's one of the things that clients really want, that they find that it's difficult for solicitors just to get back to you and say, there is no update on this matter, or we're just chasing it up, or something like that. So using that chat room is really good, not just the chat room, but even the status updates, just to see how things are going. The second post that we spoke about was trying to focus on how our services can help you. Like I just mentioned like a minute ago, the way that we set up the firm was to be electronic as possible. And I'll tell you something, when we were doing that, just copped quite a lot of slack for that. It's not going to work. You have to do things on paper. You have to print things out. No law firm is run that way. Well, you know what? I don't want to, it's a bit mean to say I was the one that laughing, but when COVID hit, there were a lot of law firms scrambling how to get their staff working from home. And how are they just going to manage doing this when there are files in the office and people working from home? How is that going to happen? So for me, the way I was working, it was quite minimal disruption. If I'm going to be honest, there wasn't much disruption at all, because our system is an online system. It's not where a lot of them say we are cloud-based. Yeah, that's where their documents are stored, but where's the actual system? The system is on the web. It's a website that you log into, and that's where we have access, and likewise clients have the client portal, log onto a website. So in terms of our services, that was one of the things. But we also spoke about how we identify our clients. Now, this came about from the electronic conveyancing because now that's pretty much mandatory. Part of that is identifying our clients. Who are you? Are you really the person who you say you are? And one of the ways that we do that is using an online platform. Now, we use InfoTrack's Web VOI, and VOI stands for Verification of Identity. Again, this is not COVID related, but it was still useful to still be able to do that. We don't physically have to see you. This can be done remotely to verify your identity, because it's actually a system who's checking your documents. It's not us, even though we still look at it and just, you know, make sure everything's correct, at least at face value. But the point is that our verification of identity can be done remotely. I will say I'd prefer not to, because I would prefer to be able to say, yes, look, I did see the person face to face and I saw the ID documents firsthand. But again, it is a system that we use that can be done remotely. So that was one of the solutions that we had for that if you were stuck at home and you needed to be identified. And we do that for all our matters, even though we don't have to. We like to, because we just want to be able to say, yes, that person is who they say they are. We spoke about business hours. So a lot of people were stuck at home doing homeschooling. And I can attest to that, the difficulty that came with that as well. So sometimes during the day wasn't suitable. Sometimes weekends when school wasn't on, the homeschooling wasn't on. Weekends are more suitable. Sometimes it's got nothing to do with homeschooling. Sometimes it's just got to do with after hours just work best. So we've also had a solution for that. We can see our clients on weekends. We can see our clients after hours. We do ask that you give us a bit of time so we can plan ahead to make that reservation. But it is certainly something that we can do. And we even spoke about the insufficient funds. So there was a lot of people that did lose their jobs and they didn't have the funds to pay their way through just the basics, what was going on, in, asking for their loans to be paused and things like that. And for those who were receiving JobKeeper, if anyone did come to us and they did need something done quite quickly, but they weren't in a position to make payments straight away, if you're on JobKeeper, we've got our payment plans in place as well. So that's how that's the services that we're trying to put out there to try to help you. The third post we spoke about was the witnessing of documents. Now, this is something that was looked into, and they came up with something called the Electronic Transactions Amendment COVID-19 Witnessing of Documents Regulation. This is New South Wales legal instrument, which allows solicitors to now witness legal documents electronically. The catch is it lasts for 6 months, so I last heard, so it's not permanent. And it will allow, during that time, it allowed us to take that path. We still prefer to see our clients face to face, practicing safety measures during the phase of COVID-19 and ongoing until now. But that is an option that is also in place. But again, it's just temporary. It's not long term. Hopefully they'll come up with something long term. I'm just waiting for an electronic will to happen, but that's just a total other issue up for debate, really. The fourth post, so there were 5 last month. The fourth post was the impact on the sale and purchase of land. Now, I'm not sure if I've mentioned this before, but I am part of the St. George Sutherland Shire Regional Law Society. I sit on the committee for that, and I chair the Real Property Law Subcommittee. And one of the things that came to us was a question from solicitors saying, hang on a minute, we're now starting to get all these additional clauses in contracts talking about if a vendor had coronavirus, and then when they're selling it to someone, how's that property going to be handed over? What's the state of cleanliness? What if they need to be in isolation? That was during that time. 6 weeks later, is that still applicable now? Well, I mean, it's still around, and some contracts may still have clauses like that. So those queries came to us at the committee, and we did forward them on to the Law Society, and then the Law Society did release some guidance on that. So the questions that we raised or passed on to the Law Society were three main ones. Was how to leave your property in a properly sanitised state before handing over the keys. What to do if you're not well and are in lockdown, and plain and simply, finance was just not coming through as easily. So that's actually one of the biggest things is that we're finding is that with the banks is that it's just been just a lot more difficult. They're being very, very diligent. So there was the previous Royal Commission where things just made it quite hard. Things like we're looking at like 10 days cooling off period instead of 5, which seems to be more reasonable now with all that's going on. And then COVID came and it just made it so much more difficult. So those were the issues that came across. And as I mentioned, the Law Society did put something out to address those points and how solicitors should address those, or things to consider when they are drafting those special conditions in those contracts. The last point that we spoke about was the impact on leases. So the small to medium enterprise type businesses for commercial landlords and commercial tenants. So we want you to, if you fall in that category, to know what your rights are and know what your responsibilities are. So during COVID-19, there were a few questions that were raised in terms of tenants. So they did address the residential tenancy. At Elocin Legal, we don't do residential tenancy. We focus on commercial and retail tenancy. And then the Australian government did release the National Mandatory Code of Conduct called the SME Commercial Leasing Principles during COVID-19. So there was a lot of things that they brought out of what can happen, what shouldn't happen. But the main point to take away from that is it's a code of conduct. It's not enforceable, the code of conduct. It's all about a genuine attempt to resolve an issue. And if a landlord is being overall picky and trying to stick to what their lease says, at the end of the day they can, but it's just not going to look good for them if there's rolling effects of issues happening, and you're gonna and it becomes litigated and the court's going to look at that. Generally there's the law, and then there's also trying to make a reasonable attempt at cooperation, which is why there's that code of conduct. So it's not all about these are my rights and I'm going to enforce it. It's the principle of it. It's really not the right approach to have to think about. It's the principle and I'm going to have it this way. So if you were one of those tenants or landlords who was impacted by that, there is that code of conduct. It is called the SME Commercial Leasing Principles during COVID-19. But if you have any questions about those, as in more detail, contact me. My number is 9131 8500 and my email is nicole@elocin.com.au, and Elocin is Nicole backwards, in case you didn't know. So, easy to remember, ELOCIN. So that was it for the posts for May last month. This month we are focusing on deceased estates or deceased estate administration. So we're now, we've released 3 posts, we've got 1 more coming out, so I will see you next month in July, going over June's post, and it'll surely, hopefully be quicker than this month's one. It was a little bit delayed this time, but fingers crossed we'll be on time. See you later. Bye.